Hello, and welcome to a Pokemon XD Gale Darkness video, where today we're going to be completing the game with the duo of Arbok and Weezing. So prepare for trouble and make it double, because today we are certified Team Rocket members. And I'm here to see whether or not Jessie and James could realistically get through this game with their Arbok and Weezing. And I do think that they're going to do quite well, just because I think the poison typing isn't even that bad in this game. And the other big reason are their stats and move pool. Now Ekans has 35 HP, 60 attack, 44 defense, 40 special attack, 54 special defense at 55 speed, and gets access to mostly normal and dark type moves. Unfortunately, it doesn't really get any good poison moves either, but it does get Earthquake, which is incredibly powerful, and that's because it's paired with Coughing, who has 40 HP, 65 attack, 95 defense, 60 special attack, 45 special defense, and 35 speed. And while Coughing doesn't get Earthquake, it does get Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, and Shadow Ball, which could all come in handy. But I think overall this is a solid pairing. So let's go ahead and go over our Ekans in particular, which has a jolly nature, raising its speed but lowering its special attack, which is honestly fine. I'm mostly going to be using physical moves with it anyway. It gets access to the Intimidate ability, lowering the opponent's attack stat on switch-in. It could also have had Shed Skin, but I flipped a coin and got Intimidate. And according to Bulbapedia, Ekans gets Wrap, Leer, and Poison Sting by level 10. So moving on to Coughing now, which has a lax nature, raising its defense but lowering its special defense, which isn't great because we're only weak to Psychic, and that's because of its ability Levitate, which makes me immune to ground attacks. So a bit of an unfortunate pairing, but I think that overall the defense is probably going to help for a few battles. And according to Bulbapedia, it gets Poison Gas, Tackle, and Smog by level 10. So with that, let's go ahead and get right into it. And these two have no real issue getting through the first area of the game, and we move right along to the Old Man. And the only thing threatening here is really the Abra, just because it has Fire Punch, Thunder Punch, or Ice Punch, which always has the chance to burn, paralyze, or freeze. But of course, once it goes down, really nothing threatens us too much. However, you can already see the start of an issue here is that all these Pokemon take quite a few turns to actually take down. So even if I'm not in danger of getting knocked out, these battles are going to take up quite a bit of time to actually get through. But eventually I'm able to get past the Old Man, and at level 13, Ekans learns Bite, which is going to be quite helpful for the battle against the Green Power Ranger, and I chose him because I have a type advantage and all of his Pokemon are fairly low level, so even with my lower attack stats I should be able to take them out pretty easily. And one thing I'm just now noticing is that Smog is only 70% accurate, which is quite frustrating. Anyway, if you are enjoying this video so far, consider liking, and if you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. I guess I'm going to start just a little bit of rambling. So it sounds like everyone's cool with the thumbnails, so thank you for all the feedback on that. They've always been a bit of an afterthought, so I wanted to pitch the question and get a general consensus on it. But it seems fairly positive, so I guess I'll keep them about the same. And we've also hit 200 subscribers, which we might have actually hit in the previous video, I just forgot to mention it then. But I'll mention it now, so thank you for all the support, and thank you so much for watching. Honestly, it's kind of incredible. Anyway, we're just about done with this battle now. The opponent's C-Dot goes down, and all that's left is the weak Oddish, and a Tackle on a Bite finishes it off. At level 17, Coughing gets a very scary move in Self-Destruct that I am almost guaranteed to accidentally misclick at some point. Anyway, at level 20, Ekans learns Glare, which I teach over Wrap, and at level 21, Coughing finally gets an accurate poison move in Sludge. And I go ahead and pick up the Numel here because I might need its charcoal item later in the game. And this one caught me by surprise, but at level 22, Ekans evolves into Arbok. I could have swore it said 25, but the earlier the better, and that's because with a new evolution means new stats. Arbok has 60 HP, 85 attack, 69 defense, 65 special attack, 79 special defense, and 80 speed. So I should be able to outspeed most threats throughout the game. And at this point in the game as well, 85 attack is quite strong. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to catching Carvanha, and that's because I want to raise the power of Bite on Arbok to be at least decent with the Black Glasses item, and then we go into the battle against Lavrina. She leads with a Beautifly and a Love Disc, and I go for Bite and Sludge into Beautifly to try to take it down immediately. which Bite does decent damage, and Sludge finishes it off. Okay, well then out comes Roselia. I go for another Bite and Sludge into it as well, hoping for a flinch, which I do get, so Sludge goes in and takes Roselia down as well. Then out comes her final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Delcatty, and I doubt that it'll go down to a single Bite and Sludge, but do I get a flinch? I do not. Shadow Rush takes Coughing down to 10, go for Sludge, that takes it down to yellow. I go for it again, Bite takes Delcatty down to red, and I don't get a flinch again and Coughing goes down, but I think that's alright. Bite finishes off Delcatty, and then all that's left is the Love Disc, which looks to be a 3-shot with Bite, so 1 bite, 2 bites, weak Water Gun, and final Bite takes it down, and we beat Loveren on the first attempt. Now, of course, you can't have a Pokemon XD Gale Darkness video without the obligatory Mirror Bee. How you doing, Mirror Bee? Well, it's always good to see you. Anyway, at level 25, Coughing learns Smokescreen, which I teach over Poison Gas, and at level 28, Arbok learns Screech, which I teach over Leer. At the Railgun Tower, I pick up my 2 favorite TMs, Hidden Power and Protect, and I'm going to teach Hidden Power to both Arbok and Weezing. And Arbok has a Hidden Power Ground, which is actually quite nice, because Steel is completely immune to poison. Having something to actually hit it is nice. And Coughing gets Hidden Power Grass, which is incredibly helpful for this upcoming boss battle. And I teach Arbok Protect, as well as Body Slam at the Tutor Lady. And then I go into the battle against Snaddle. He leads with a Lantern and a Quagsire, and I decide to go for Hidden Power into Lantern, taking it down to half. And Shockwave actually does quite a bit of damage to Coughing. Go for Hidden Power that gets a crit and takes Quagsire down in a single hit. I'm not quite sure if it would do it normally. I go for Hidden Power and Bite into Lunatone, which Bite doesn't quite do half. Another Shockwave takes Coughing down to 24. Hidden Power doesn't quite take down Lunatone either, but a Bite will finish it off, and then out comes Castform. Now, unfortunately, Shockwave does just find the KO on Coughing, which is a little unfortunate, but I finish it off with another Hidden Power. And then out comes Metang, which I go for Hidden Power into, which doesn't quite do half, unfortunately. So it will be able to get off another Confusion. I go for Bite, hoping for a flinch, but Weather Ball's doing too much damage anyway. I do luckily get the flinch though. Metang goes down, but it's already too late. Weather Ball finishes me off, and I go into the battle once again. And really the only difference is I'm going to take down Lantern on the first turn, and that's because it's just such a threat to Coughing. So I want to take it down as quick as possible. And then out comes Lunatone once again. But unfortunately, I won't be able to take it down in a single turn, so I am hoping that I do get a flinch on it. And I click too fast and accidentally use a ground move into it. So unfortunately, it's able to set up Shadow Sky, and I won't be able to take it down before it hits us with the Shadow Wave. So I decide to go ahead and try to finish it off. Shadow Wave hits, doing actually less than I thought it would. Hidden Power does finish it off, then out comes Castform. And Quagsire actually uses Ice Punch, which is a bit strange, because usually it only uses that move once you're slower than it after it's used enough Rock Tombs. But anyway, go for Bite into Castform, don't get the flinch. And I'm down to 18 and 10 HP. I decide to take down the Quagsire this turn. That way it's not going to be using more Ice Punches, and I'm risking being frozen. And I go for Protect and Self-Destruct, which luckily they both decide to attack Arbok, and I'm able to take down Castform and nearly Metang. But luckily I do outspeed Metang, so I should be able to take it down with a single bite. And just like that, Snaddle has been defeated. On the SS Libra, I run into a Coughing who uses Psybeam to take down my Coughing before I get revenge and take it down with Body Slam. But how does a Coughing get Psybeam, because it's not in the TM or Level Up Learn set? Well, you actually have to breed it with a Mischievous, which is kind of funny that this trainer went out of their way to do that. Anyway, I pick up the TM for Flamethrower and I teach that over Smokescreen, and finally level 35 Coughing evolves into Weezing, which is going to be a very much needed upgrade because Coughing was getting incredibly weak. And of course with the new evolution means new stats. Weezing has 65 HP, 90 attack, 120 defense, 80 special attack, 70 special defense, and 60 speed. So it shouldn't be worrying too much about physical moves. However, the special defense is quite low, and the speed stat is even lower, so I do think that I'm going to be outspeed quite often by most Pokemon. However, I think overall this is a solid upgrade. So with that, let's go and move on to another coughing. Hello there, coughing. Goodbye, other coughing. And then I move into the battle against Gonzap, who leads with a Nuzleaf and an Electrode. On the first turn, the Nuzleaf always goes for Fake Out, which unfortunately hits Arbok. Spark doesn't paralyze Weezing. I go for Sludge. That doesn't quite take down the Electrode. Go for Hidden Power to finish it off. And then out comes Vileplume. I go for Flamethrower into it, which doesn't quite take it down a single hit, but it does get burnt, meaning that it will go down at the end of this turn. Then out comes this next Pokemon, which is Whiscash. And I go for Hidden Power into it. Body Slam doesn't quite take down the Nuzleaf, but it does take down the Whiscash. And then finally out comes Skarmory, which should go down to a Flamethrower. Nuzleaf goes down to another Body Slam, and Flamethrower does do the trick and take down Skarmory. Okay, well that was pretty easy. In the Cypher Pyramid, I pick up the TM for Thunderbolt, and I teach it to Weezing. And of course, I knew it was going to happen eventually. I misclick, hit self-destruct, and take down everything on the field, including myself. Honestly, it was bound to happen, and it was pretty funny when it did. At the top of the pyramid, I get the move for Earthquake, which I teach over Hidden Power, and I run into another Weezing. Hello, other Weezing. Goodbye, other Weezing. And then he sends out Arbok. So, is this person secretly another Team Rocket member in disguise? Probably. Anyway, I think had this battle happened earlier in the game, I probably would have taken this Arbok, because it gets access to the move Sludge Bomb, which is the strongest poison move, and it would have been very helpful. But because it's so late in the game, and I've already put so many levels into our current Arbok, there's no reason to get it, and then I go into the battle against Gorgon. He leads with a Lairon and a Celio, and because I have the power of Levitate, I can levitate over all the Earthquakes, and also attack at the same time, meaning that I can take down the Celio, out comes Slowking, another Earthquake to take down the Lairon, and do half damage to Slowking. And at level 44, Weezing gets Explosion, which is just the upgrade to Self-Destruct. And then out comes Ursaring, I go for Thunderbolt, finishing off the Slowking. And then out comes Primeape, his first Shadow Pokemon. I go for Earthquake and Thunderbolt once again, which Earthquake does over half to Ursaring, and does about the same to Primeape, but Thunderbolt takes down Primeape with a crit. And then out comes his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Hypno. Ursaring uses Slash, not really doing that much damage. I go for Earthquake once again, which takes down the Ursaring and does over half to Hypno. And a final Sludge takes down the Hypno, beating Gorgon pretty easily. Now moving on to the final area of the game, and they're actually doing really well, and I don't even think they'll struggle that much through the last area of the game. So I think this really comes down to taking down Pokemon quickly. So I go into the battle against Lavrina. She leads with a Gardevoir and a Gorbis. I go for Earthquake and Sludge into Gardevoir to take it down, because I don't want to be hit by Psychic. And then out comes the Roselia. Gorbis hits an Attract into Weezing, but that's alright because I'm just going for Earthquake again, which will take down the Roselia and take down the Gorbis, which will bring out her final two Pokemon, those being Shadow Farfetch'd and Shadow Altaria. Now, I do want to take down the Farfetch'd as quick as I can, so maybe this Thunderbolt should have gone into the Farfetch'd instead, but I need to get rid of Farfetch'd because it likes to use Shadow Panic, which causes confusion, and I really don't want to lose a fight based on bad luck. But it was a pretty easy Lavrina overall, and we move on to another Weezing. Hello, other Weezing. Goodbye, other Weezing. And at the top of the volcano, I run into Snaddle once again. And I should preface that this is the second attempt, and that's because the first attempt got so close to victory that I didn't really see a need to show it. And also, I made a very key mistake that led to that. Anyway, on this attempt, I decide to double into Quagsire on the first turn, and that's because Quagsire is really annoying to deal with, and that's because he doesn't go down to a single Earthquake, and he uses Mudslap, lowering Arbok's speed. And because Scizor doesn't really do anything, I can keep it around while I take down Solrock, and on this attempt, I actually decide to take it down immediately because I want to get to Starmie as quick as possible, and that's because Starmie is incredibly powerful. And this time, it actually just goes for Shadow Break, which is kind of strange. It usually goes for Shadow Storm, but I'm able to take it down with ease. and cast form uses a weak flamethrower before going down itself. So second attempt Snaddle, not too bad. Moving on to Ardos, he leads with a Shadow Swallow and an Alakazam, and I need to get rid of Alakazam immediately because it's going to hit with a very strong Psychic. So Alakazam goes down, and then out comes Kingdra, and because I don't want to play the Swallow Lottery, I decide to take it down as well, bringing out Heracross. Now unfortunately Swallow did set up Shadow Sky, so Fruity Pebbles are going to be raining down. I go for Earthquake and Thunderbolt into Kingdra to try to take it down in a single turn, and luckily Earthquake does take it down to half and Thunderbolt takes it down. Out comes Electabuzz, and as long as Arbok doesn't have its speed lowered by Rock Tomb, I should be able to outspeed. Fruity Pebbles rain down once again, go for Earthquake and Flamethrower into the Heracross, and Electabuzz goes down to Earthquake. Then out comes his final Pokemon, which is Snorlax. And even though my speed is now lowered, I'm much faster than the Snorlax, so I don't need to worry about it. Now I could decide to go for Explosion here, but I think I'm going to play it safe and just go for Earthquake and Sludge, which Earthquake's not quite half, and Sludge takes it down to red. It does get poisoned though, and Arbok goes down in a single hit. Does Poison finish the job? Not quite, but Sludge will, and Ardos is defeated first try. Moving on to Gorgon once again, he leads with an Ursaring and a Slowking. I go for Earthquake and Thunderbolt into the Slowking, which does take it down. And then out comes his next Pokemon, which is Aggron. And because they're not going to be using Protect this turn, I go for Earthquake, which takes down Aggron in a single hit, and Thunderbolt to finish off the Ursaring, which brings out his Walrein and his first Shadow Pokemon, which is Poliwrath. And I go for Earthquake once again, which does about a third to Walrein and would have been about a third to Poliwrath as well, but I got a crit taking it down to red, and Thunderbolt finishes it off. And then out comes his final Pokemon, which is Shadow Mr. Mime, which takes half damage from Walrein's Earthquake, and another Earthquake takes it down, and then all that's left is the Walrein, and Thunderbolt takes it down as well. So easy Gorgon. Moving on to Eldis, he leads with a Ninjask and a Shadow Manectric. I go for Earthquake to finish off the Manectric, which it does, and then out comes Shadow Salamence. Now this thing's always a bit of a threat because of just how strong it is. Go for Thunderbolt, which really isn't doing that much damage. I go for Protect, and luckily they both decide to target Arbok. I go for another Thunderbolt, taking it down to yellow. And just in case Body Slam actually takes it down, I decide to go for Sludge to hit the oncoming Flygon, but unfortunately it's not enough to take it down. But Salamence goes down to Sludge anyway. Then out comes the aforementioned Flygon, which I go for Body Slam into, doing about a third. And then I go for Flamethrower, taking it down to yellow. So one more Body Slam should do the job, and I go for Flamethrower once again to hit the Shadow Marowak. Now this thing is always a bit of a threat because it does a ton of damage with Shadow End. Luckily it looks to be a 2-shot, so I really don't need to worry about it, so I decide to go for Body Slam to take down Ninjask. Unfortunately it's not a 1-shot, and Flamethrower misses the range. Luckily it misses the Shadow End, so I go for a Flamethrower to finish it off, and I'm not exactly sure why I went for Body Slam into Ninjask. I knew it was going to protect that turn. Oh well, out comes the Shadow Lapras. I go for Thunderbolt and Body Slam, which no paralysis. Thunderbolt actually does way more damage than I thought it would. It sets up Shadow Sky, and while I do think that Earthquake could probably finish the job, I decide to double it into it just in case. And unfortunately it wouldn't have taken it down, so Thunderbolt is needed to finish it off, and then all that's left is the Ninjask. So one last Body Slam finishes it off, and a pretty easy Eldis as well. Now before I go into the final battle, I go ahead and teach Hidden Power over Sludge. And moving on to the big box legendary, Shadow Lugia. And unfortunately Arbok really doesn't have anything to hit it all that well. Bite really doesn't do that much damage, but it does always have a chance to flinch. Shadow Storms do quite a bit of damage. I'm able to take it down to half with Thunderbolt. Bite does actually get the flinch, and Thunderbolt finishes it off. So we move on to the final battle against Gravel. He leads with a Shadow Rhydon and Shadow Moltres. And I go for Body Slam into the Moltres, doing not all that much damage. And Hidden Power does take down Rhydon in a single hit. Okay, well that's good to know. And because I know that I'm going to lose this fight, I decide to try to check as many ranges as possible. Unfortunately, I don't get the flinch on bite, so I'm not able to see if Executor would have gone down to a single flamethrower. And I decide to go for Body Slam into it, but it doesn't even go down from half health, and Arbok is taken down. Okay, well, I'll just ignore the Rhydon and take down the Moltres. Go for Bite, no flinch unfortunately. And then Thunderbolt, not quite able to take it down, and Rhydon is using Shadow Panic. And because of that, eventually I lose. So, now on attempt number 4, and because the Pokemon change their behavior as you level up, I'm hoping that it's no longer going to be using Shadow Panic now that I've used up all my rare candies. And I am able to take down Moltres with Bite and Thunderbolt now. Then out comes the Executor, and Rhydon has decided to swap over to using Shadow Hold, which is very much preferable. And I found out that Bite is much better than Body Slam into Executor. I take down the Rhydon, then out comes Tauros, and I get a lucky miss on Shadow End. Go for Bite to finish off the Executor, and even though I think Flamethrower is good against the Tauros, I'm not sure if it'll take it down in a single hit. Unless I get a crit. Okay. Well, now the final plan comes into play. And after a little bit of Fruity Pebbles, I go for Protect and Explosion. And they both attack into Arbok, and Explosion finishes the job, taking them both down and beating the game. So how well did Weezing and Arbok do? Well, they beat the game at a time of 9 hours, 38 minutes, and 30 seconds, at level 59 and 58 respectively, and they only fainted 7 times throughout the entire game, one of those being to me. So honestly, that is incredible, and way better than I thought they'd do, even though I already had the idea that they were going to do pretty good. Unfortunately, because of their relative lack of power, they don't find themselves in the upper echelon of Pokemon. However, they do find themselves at the top of the A tier. Now, this was a very close race between them and Sharpedo and Camerupt, but I do think that even though there's a 7-minute difference in times, the fact that I only fainted 7 times and I do much better against the bosses, so I do think they are deserving of the top spot. The only real issue I see is that they are kinda slow. Some battles take a little bit longer than they need to, which is honestly a little upsetting because I thought Arbok would be doing a little better than it actually performed, and I think that really comes down to its move pool just being a bit smaller. But Weezing definitely comes in and fixes a bit of that issue by just having more coverage and overall better stats. But I think that's just the issue, is that Weezing's a good Pokemon. Coughing is a little too weak and doesn't get an accurate poison move until level 21, which is a little unfortunate. But anyway, they find themselves at the top of the A tier, so if you did enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. If you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and Team Rocket's blasting off again.